Hello, Jonathan.
Hi, Michael.
What do you want to show us today?
Let's take a look at the OPC router being deployed as a sort of data hub on the edge device, collecting data from a WAGO PFC and an RFID reader to print out labels using a Zebra printer. Would you mind explaining the benefits of deploying the OPC router on the edge device?
Yeah, of course. So the edge computer, first of all, is just plug and play. You can put it out of the box and just click it in the field in your cabinet and just use it. Because there are two ports, they're separated. You can one just use as DHCP for the internet connection, and the other one is configured with a static IP address.
That sounds quite interesting. Would you mind explaining the different hardware configurations available?
The edge computer, we've got them in 3 performance classes. So the first one is like we got that one here. It's just like with 2 Ethernet ports and processor with 1.8 gigahertz of power. And the most powerful edge computer got 4 Ethernet ports and just 2.8 gigahertz of power. Also, a benefit of our Ethernet of our edge computers, every one of them is just pre-installed with Docker. So you just can use Docker containers, on startup. So the benefits also, like, they are isolated and just not as useful of resources as in VM. Yes. By the way, Docker. Do I need to be an expert to deploy the OPC router on our edge computer?
No, you don't need to be an expert in Docker to deploy the OPC router on the edge device, as the OPC router management interface guides you through the process and does a lot of the configuration. You only have to parameterize it just like you know it from a Windows installation, and the management interface will perform the deployment in the background. But if you are an experienced user regarding Docker, you can let the OPC router management interface generate a Docker run command, which you can then customize to your individual requirements and perform the deployment on your own.
That sounds great. Would you mind to demonstrate me the deployment on an edge computer?
Yeah, of course. Let's take a look. Usually on the left side of the OPC router interface, you see the plugins, and on top of that, we find the entry point for the automatic Docker setup. In this view, we firstly enter the IP address of our edge device and the credentials that are required to configure the edge device later on. Once we hit next, a connection check is performed in the background, and we can see that the connection was established successfully and we are able to configure the edge device. Let's choose a name for our new Docker container and select a version of the OPC router we would like to deploy in a time zone. After setting the access credentials that are used later on to configure the OPC router, we hit next and can see the deployment running in the background. Once the deployment has finished, the Docker container with the OPC router will start in the background, and in the final screen we can see all the configured parameters which are required to connect to the Docker container, and we can immediately check if the Docker container has been deployed successfully and is reachable right now. And once we've seen the connection being established, we can close this dialog, and let's take a quick look at a different container I've deployed previously with a small sample project. So in this example, we are gathering data from a WAGO PFC and printing a label, and a different sample is gathering data from an RFID reader and printing a different label. Would you mind placing one of the RFID tags on the reader?
Of course.
So right now we've seen both the printer printing out a new label, and in the status view of the OPC router, we've seen a new point appearing with the data that has been transferred. Would you mind switching one of the buttons too? And now we can see that for the button 2, as the input via OPC UA, a new label has been printed with the data, and in the status view, the very same data can be observed later on.
That was a really easy deployment. So thank you for the presentation, and also thank you to the viewers, and goodbye.
Goodbye.